Have you ever dreamed of quitting your job and replacing your income by buying an online business instead of starting one from scratch? It certainly sounds like a tempting proposition, skipping the long, hard slog of building something from nothing and instead taking over an established operation. But is it really as easy as it sounds? What does it actually take to successfully buy and grow an online business? And can this path provide the freedom and flexibility we all crave as entrepreneurs? Jaryd Krause went from being a burnt out plumber to buying and growing several online businesses to the point where he was able to travel the world and go surfing whenever he felt like it. He's now dedicated his entrepreneurial journey to helping others bypass the startup grind by buying existing digital assets. With years of real-world experience, he's uniquely qualified to shed light on what it takes to make this approach work. Welcome to the Online Business Launchpad podcast. I'm your host, Trudy Rankin, and I bring you stories, tips, and advice from online entrepreneurs who are finding success. Because if we've done it, so can you. I've been running my own online business for 9 years now, with more than a few twists and turns and upside down bits, as I've learned what to do and what not to do to achieve my goals. And because of what I've learned, I've become passionate about helping overworked and overwhelmed online business owners like you grow your business without burning out or having to hire a big team. And I've used my experience and the experience of others to help hundreds of people grow their online business. And one of my greatest joys is working with people who, because of life's circumstances, need a flexible work from home or work from anywhere option that helps them pay the bills. My mission is simple. I want to help you solve the challenges you face as a far too busy online business owner so you can have more time and money for yourself and your family and more choices in how you live your life. So if you're intrigued by the idea of skipping ahead by acquiring an existing online operation rather than starting from square one, stick around. We're digging into the realities of buying online businesses with someone who has walked that path himself. So let's get cracking. Well, thank you, Jaryd, for being on the podcast. As I said before we started recording, I'm really looking forward to talking with you today. Just because, as I said, last year's project was buying a business, buying an online business, a website, and improving it. And then later on this year, I want to do the same thing, assuming that everything goes well with my project. But I know that our listeners are interested in what you do in your journey simply because not everybody wants to go through that period of time where you have to start from scratch, moving from corporate into small business ownership, having to learn everything from scratch and learning everything that goes with that. And they want to be able to shortcut that process, bring their corporate knowledge to bear in being a business owner, as opposed to being somebody who has to do everything and wear all the hats. And buying your own business is one of the ways that you can do that. As I said earlier, thank you for being here. I'd love to ask you some questions.
Thank you so much, Trudy, for having me here. Congratulations on buying your first online business as well. And yeah, I'm happy to dig into as much as you need or like about us replacing our income from buying an online business. This is my whole philosophy, life, what I've been led into organically is to help people transition out of the workplace to, our goal is to help people buy an online business and to be able to spend more time doing what they love with the people they love. And yeah, it is, there's no such thing as shortcuts. It's not a fast track to wealth either. It's definitely, there's a learning curve still, but it can be you buying something that is established versus starting. And yeah.
Well, it fits a little bit more the older models of people would want to leave their job. And so they'd look around and go, okay, I'm going to buy a business. And it would either be a franchise or an existing business where somebody has a book full of customers or clients. And online businesses have helped really expand that concept, but also created a whole lot other ways that you can fail as well. So it's an interesting thing. But could you just share with our listeners just a little bit about you, where you came from, and how you've ended up doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, sure. Was born in Australia and went through the school system, and I wanted to become really wealthy. I wanted to become an accountant because I knew somebody that was wealthy as an accountant. And I just realized I wasn't the most academically smart person, and I became a plumber. And I did that for 10 years. And through that period, I realized how much I hated it. I worked my way through, I got a good role as a supervisor for the firm, but I traveled a lot. I'd quit my work and then go traveling, as a lot of us Aussies and New Zealanders have done, has been on big trips. We've been very fortunate in the last few years to have a strong Australian dollar. And yeah, through some of those adventures, I realized I can't go back to being a plumber. At one stage, I was living in Egypt working as a dive master, and I thought I've got to do something here. And I literally typed into Google how to travel the world and make money online. And that's what sort of started my journey. I started a couple of online businesses and I sucked at it, to be honest. Excuse my French, but it was really hard. And I tried a couple of them. I tried a blog and I tried an e-commerce business. And I quickly found that a stat like 90% of startups fail. And I thought, if 90% of these things fail, why don't I go away and buy one that's past that 90% failure rate and run it and grow it? And then I did that. I bought one, it worked well. And then I bought another one and it worked really well. And then bought a third one. I was able to quit my job as a plumber. And then people were, as I would go to like events, such as like marketing events or business events, people were like, hang on, dude, can we just give you the microphone and you teach us what you're doing instead of this other method? And I realized, okay, there's a bit of a demand. People are wanting me to teach. And so I started teaching for free, and then it turned into a business. Yeah.
I think that's fascinating. It sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like you said you did a lot of traveling, but you did that traveling while you were still working as a plumber.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so maybe escaping the life of the plumber to get a little bit of travel in, but it still meant you're tied back to your plumbing job to create whatever income you needed to be able to support your traveling. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like I would go and save money for 6 months and then I go travel for 6 months, or I go and work for a year and then go travel for 6 months. And yeah, I really had a tough time with my job as a plumber. Like I was working big hours. I was spending 18 hours in the car each week. That's just commuting, not getting paid. And then I would spend 12 hours a day, 10 to 12 hours a day on the tools. And that would lead me to, in my younger years, not having the best mindset, a lot of drinking and a dark hole. I wasn't satisfied, if anything, a bit worse with where I was in my life. Yeah,
Yeah.
mentally, yeah.
I'm smiling a little bit because I've heard a lot of people say that plumbers should probably be having gold tools because of the prices that you have to pay. But what people don't realize is what you just said, is that it involves a lot of unpaid time traveling from job to job. And there's a lot of expenses involved in having a business, or if you're working for somebody, there's other pros and cons to it, but it's not always what it's cracked up to be. Because if you've ever done anything when it comes to using your hands or creating stuff, if you have to crawl into these little tiny spaces and try and fix pipes and put pipes in, it can be a little interesting. I say
Yeah.
that. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think it's also a mindset thing, like a not a mindset, but a view of some people saying that plumbers and electricians might have golden tools and they earn a lot of money. Well, it's all perspective. What is a lot of money? And I try not to defend myself against some views that I don't hold. Like I don't hold that plumbers earn a lot of money. I know that they might for some level of like where some people are at, but there's a lot of money to be made out there. And if we open our minds and break these mental constructs, a lot of old wives' tales, my mum says a lot of old wives' tales. And I always say to her, is that true? Do you believe that? And challenge the opinion and the thought process.
Yes. Yes. And I think it's really important because the key point is that what you were doing wasn't making you happy, and it wasn't allowing you to live the life that you wanted to live. And so despite what people believe about how much money or how much money you were or weren't making, you wanted to do something else. So I'm curious, you said you tried to start a couple of businesses on your own, and then you thought and realized that buying a business was going to make a lot more sense. Could you just talk a little bit about whether there was a a disconnect, or what was the difference between trying to start those two businesses that you mentioned and actually running a successful business that somebody else had already set up?
The biggest difference was I thought if you build it, they will come. And it's not true. So I built a travel blog around all my travels, and I did start to bring in some traffic, and I made a little bit of money through some affiliate stuff. It wasn't really much. It wasn't what it is today in terms of ad revenue and affiliate revenue from blogs. And then I thought, okay, I need to create an e-commerce business so I can sell some travel products. And I created it, built out this awesome drop shipping business, great branding, great products, Camelback products, and really top of the range stuff. And then I sold two things over like the space of a year and a half. And I realized, well, I know nothing about marketing. Like I need to know how to get traffic and run ads. And I didn't have much money for ads. And so the big difference between buying something was I was basically buying an audience that and it can be a list, an email list. It could be a list of like traffic from certain sources, but coming to one place to buy a product or a service. And that was the big disconnect for me, is realizing, okay, I need to learn how to acquire an audience. And what I do now is sometimes I've got companies that say, hey, we've got a marketing budget, and they might have a marketing budget of say they got 10 million marketing budget for a year. They might go, well, we might put 5 million into ads, and we might put $5 million into acquiring our audience, different businesses that have our audience already. So acquiring those and merging them into their primary business. So it really is about owning the audience, because if you can own the audience and the traffic, and not in a sadistic way of owning it, but once you can really control it, then you can decide what products and services you sell. And I believe that's the best way to grow a business, is ask your audience what they want and change your products and services over time to suit what they want, based on feedback, right? Like I could take all the credit and say that I built my business and I scaled it and grew it. But the reality is that my audience did. They told me what they wanted, what they needed, and I just gave it to them. So I just needed to get out of the way of that.
So I'm really curious in turn, because I 100% agree with you. I think that, and in fact, of all the people that I've interviewed and talked to, the ones that have been the most successful are the ones who asked, what do you need? What are you really struggling with? How can I help? And how did you go about that? What kind of a process did you use to do that?
To build an audience, or to ask for feedback?
To ask for feedback.
Yeah. So it depends on the business model, and how we acquire customers, or they will acquire products. But in my primary business, what I do now is when people join, I ask a bunch of questions. Why did you join? Why? What's your goal? What do you want to get out of this? And I get all that language and what they want, and then I can shape the product to suit what they want. And I use that language in my sales and marketing. People don't like, it's funny, people are like, yeah, Jaryd, I want to buy a business. Nobody wants to buy a business. What we really want is what the business provides us. And that's why I say in our tagline, our goal is to help people spend more time doing what they love with the people they love, because that's what they want. Right? The business is the vehicle. Like I'm not selling people to buy a business, because that's boring. Who's going to want to do that? Who's going to want to spend money? Nobody.
Did you find that, and because this is one of the distinctions that I seem to be seeing, is you can either buy a business or you can buy yourself a job, especially if you look on places like Flippa, where they're selling websites that are maybe $2,000 to $10,000 or whatever. There's some money coming in, but it takes a lot of work to get that flywheel going. How did you find that in terms of, for yourself? Were you looking for a job, or were you just really looking to completely shift your mindset to the business side of things?
At the start, being completely honest, I was like, I'll just do any work. If I can do 40 hours a week online, it's better than 80 hours, 70 hours on the tools. So at the start for me, it was, I did buy smaller businesses. They weren't so established. And I do understand a lot of people starting out are in that price range as well, that bracket where you are buying yourself a sort of a part-time job, really, where you need to work at that to build it up, to get it to a point that you are no longer the operator, you are solely the owner. Because like you said before we hit the record buttons, there's a massive difference between being an owner and an operator. And the people that own the businesses, they typically put people in the business to operate the business that are far smarter than them as owners. So an owner coming down to the operator level, I'd rather put somebody in place that's far smarter at me at running that type of business and get me out of the way. I'll just own it and they operate it. Typically, I find myself, even in my own health journey and my own life, I'm typically the biggest bottleneck. I need to get out of the way. So how can I do that as fast as possible? And that's what I tried to do when I bought these businesses and grew them, is you start to put people in place. And it does cost money to do. And you might see the short term of you making less money, but it's an investment as well by hiring good staff, good team, good operators.
Yeah. And just in terms of, because it's a really big mindset shift to go from, hey, I'm doing all the work to, hey, I'm handing it over to somebody else. And you're going to report back to me and tell me how you've done. How long did it take you to make that shift yourself in terms of the mindset shift?
That's a good question. I would say, how long did I think the shift came probably faster. The ability to be able to do it probably came slower because of me working and being in the way, fumbling around, not knowing how to grow it fast enough to be able to afford to hire those people. I think the mindset shift probably happened over the space of a 2 to 3 year period. And I think it probably took me 4 to 5 years maybe to be able to get to that point. Still in my business, I still do a portion of delivery. I still do coaching. I have worked out how to have the most fulfillment in my life through my work and do all the pieces that I find fulfilling, which is podcasting, talking like this, and coaching. And the rest is done by other teams. So, yeah, it's dependent on who wants what in their life and what jobs they do and don't want to do or don't want to be doing. But the mindset shift, I think, it's hard to put on a time frame for people. I think people could have that mindset shift in a matter of seconds once they have one aha moment around it. But yeah, does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does, because it does take a while to, you can make the mindset shift, but then you have to build, as you said, it takes a while to build the tools or the capability to then be good at what you're doing. Yeah, I want to just touch on one thing before we start to talk a little bit about what you're doing at the moment. As you've bought your businesses and things, you brought people in to run them. Do the websites that you buy or the businesses that you buy, do they typically come with a team, or do you have to bring in people from scratch?
Yeah, good question. It depends. The first business did not come with a team that I bought. The second business did come with a team, and the third business didn't. So it depends on the business that you're looking at, really. I am a big fan of buying something with team, because I know in the second business that I bought, they taught me everything. And it was exceptional. It was really good. And then I could come in and listen to them, get feedback. It was really nice to hear what they would do to grow the business, which was actually worked because they were in the business and they were listening to the customers and they knew what to do, and to make it not only easy for them, which is my goal anyway with all of my employees, is let me know what you need. I want to make it easier so they enjoy their job more, but also make it better for the customers. I think it's highly beneficial to buy with a team. If you can't, then you've still got the advantage of that you can build an awesome team as well. So depends on the size of the business.
Yeah. So just out of curiosity, in terms of finding a team, if there isn't a team, do you typically tend to find people within the area that the business covers, or do you have a preference for any particular country where you go to find a team to run that particular business?
It's not so much about location. It's more about the expertise of the person for that particular role. I have helped people hire a team through coaching. I've referred people to hire people. And a lot of now the problem that I had to solve was I taught people to buy businesses, and they were great, cool. What do we do now? And I'm like, grow it. And they're like, okay, help me. And I did. And I wasn't scalable. My time wasn't scalable. So then I put in place an SEO agency where people now can basically give their business to us to manage and grow. I'm a bit biased in that one because people typically coming to us after they buy the business and giving it to us. That said, some people are like, hey, I want to do it my own way, and that's cool. I do recommend, depending on the task, sometimes you can get some really good labor through virtual assistants and really good team. I've got really good virtual assistants. And then sometimes we should not be going with the virtual assistant. Sometimes we should be going for somebody that's a bit more highly specialized. Like, for example, in an e-commerce business, I've got a lot of referrals for ad managers and consultants for that.
Yeah, as you said, it just depends a little bit on the type of business. So one more quick question about the businesses that you've bought and learned on. Typically, what size are they from a just a range in terms of yearly revenue?
Yeah, so the first one that I bought was $15,000 US, and then it went up from there into the large six-figure range. And yeah, and it depends on, they're the ones that I started out. So I bought the first one for 15,000, bought the next one a bit bigger, and the third one even bigger. And then I started to buy smaller ones as well. And then I compressed, in terms of my own portfolio, I compressed how many businesses I did own. And now I only own two businesses. And that works really well for me in terms of capacity and focus. But yeah, I mean, it depends on what size people I want to start out at. A lot of people that I work with start out around in the $50,000 range up to the seven-figure range.
Yeah, and a lot of it depends on how much experience they've got, whether it's their first starter site or whether they've done it before or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're not so much their experience, because most people are buying a business doing it for the first time. It's also based on their risk tolerance and their appetite for resource allocation as well. So there are some, you can buy a smaller, well, like we said before, is like you can buy something a bit smaller, but you're going to have a lot more hands-on work to do yourself. When you buy something larger, you've typically got something more established, and you've got more flexibility in terms of leniency and buffers in place with profits and profit margins to be able to afford to resolve some hiccups that may happen along the way by hiring people to help you resolve those, versus it be a scary thing and you having to face it yourself without much money on the lower end spectrum of a smaller business. Yeah, typically I find now, and I'm pushing more towards people buying a business that is more established, also within their risk tolerance and their financial means. Not saying if you've only got $300,000, you should spend all your $300,000 on a business. Typically, I see 80% of your capital, or 80% of what allocation you can put towards acquiring a business should go towards the acquisition, the 20% towards what growth.
Yeah, yeah. Because just that whole process of buying something, learning how to make it run. And as you said, the risk tolerance side of things, some people are a lot more attached to the idea that they should be keeping their capital and not losing it. And other people are willing to go, hey, well, yeah, we might have lost a little bit, but that was an investment in learning how to do things. I'm curious, as we think about your journey where you started buying these businesses and you learned a lot about what to do, people started asking you for advice. And I smiled when you said you started teaching them for free. Just talk a little bit about that whole journey of moving from that point where you're giving away your knowledge for free to where you've built another business around the concept of helping other people do the same thing as you've done successfully.
Yeah, I love that question. I left my job, my plumbing job, in 2015. And so I was basically semi-retired in 2016 with a couple of businesses. And I got invited to a bunch of business events, one in Thailand. And then that's when I was on the bus, on the way home from an excursion one time, and the whole bus was just like, one person asked me a question, then everybody else was on the bus was just sitting there like listening to my story. And then I was like, wow, okay, people really want this. And then I just thought, it's just people that are entrepreneurs that are really hungry for success in the online space. And then I was traveling for a year and a half. I went through Asia for 3 months, and I went and surfed through Central and South America. My main thing is surfing. That's my number one passion, which has led me down this path as well, not just travel, but mostly surfing. And I found a lot of people that I met in these surf locations were like, mate, can you show me some of the things that you do? Just teach me. And over that year, I got a list of like 10 people that I was like, okay, if I build something for you guys, if I build out a course, will you guys do it and buy a business? And they said yes. And so I built this course out for them and I taught it for free over Zoom through 2016, I think it was end of 2016. So before 4 years before COVID and Zoom became popular. And they I tried to hold them accountable, but they didn't, and nobody ended up buying a business. And I thought, oh, I've done all this work. Surely somebody would be interested in this. And I thought I could just sell this as a course. And so I went back home to Australia in 2017 and I thought I'm going to hire a mentor. And I did. And I basically polished the course up and sold it. And it just went really well the first year. Yeah. The first year we did 500,000 in sales, just under 500,000 in sales. And I hired a team and all that sort of stuff. And it just went gangbusters.
And then, of course, COVID hit, and,
Yeah.
and
Not
the world
us.
turned upside down. What happened then?
We able people, people were turning to the internet to make money online. It was really nice to be able to help more people facilitate out of these roles that they didn't really get fulfillment from to more people opening their eyes, saying, "Oh, this isn't a possibility." It's really beautiful to be able to help people in that way through that time.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting time. And so I want to fast forward a little bit from there and into today's market for buying and selling online businesses, which typically I'll call it digital assets, because it's
Yeah.
not always the whole business. It can be just it can be a website or an app or a whole bunch of
Mm.
stuff.
Mm.
How do you find the market at the moment in terms of buying or selling something that's an online business?
Well, that's a good question. There's markets within markets. And what I mean by that is you've got different size price ranges, and then you've also got different types of asset classes. So we've got content websites, basically media businesses, and then you've got e-commerce. And within under e-commerce, you've got a few different types of businesses. You can have drop shipping, self-product distribution, Amazon FBA, and 3PL. Or then you can have SaaS and membership, right? Software as a service or a membership business. And the multiples, and what a multiple is basically how many years EBITDA or net profit times a yearly multiple is what the asking price is typically for a business. Sometimes businesses will do that in a monthly multiple instead of a yearly multiple. And right now, content websites have been hit pretty bad. A lot of businesses have been hit pretty bad through Google changes and Google algorithm update changes starting September last year. And another one's just happened through March. And we're recording in the month of March. And it has hit a lot of businesses, particularly content sites that are optimized to just get traffic and only earn revenue from ads and affiliate revenue. Those businesses that are selling real good physical products and services have fared a bit better. But it's been a pretty disruptive market for organic traffic from Google for those types of businesses. So in terms of that market, the prices and the multiples have come down a little bit, which is some people might think, oh, maybe it's not the right time to buy. Well, hang on a second. You're buying something cheaper than what you could have 3 years ago. So and it can be cyclical as well. In terms of e-commerce businesses and SaaS and membership businesses, this just means that as one drops, more people might start to move to e-commerce businesses and the multiples might start to increase. I find e-commerce businesses pretty stable. They used to be overvalued throughout COVID when there was a lot of competition in terms of private equity firms competing against each other to buy as many Amazon FBA businesses as possible. I've heard rumors and stories where there were companies that asked if anybody had made an offer on this business, and if they had, they would just make the offer more and buy the business to beat their competitors without doing much due diligence, right? There was a lot of ego in this space, and I knew there was a lot of what we called Amazon FBA aggregators, and they grew really fast, but they grew so fast they didn't know how to operate the businesses at that scale. So that brought multiples back down. So multiples for those businesses have come back down. With membership and SaaS businesses, those businesses are very attractive because they're typically lower risk, where you are buying a database or a list of people that are already paying a recurring income for the product or the service. And so those multiples typically stay high, and rightfully so. Yeah, long answer. Sorry about that.
No, it's good. It's good. So I'm just curious, what would be your personal favorite type of business at the moment?
If I could buy Zoom, I'd be very happy. Something like that. A SaaS business or a high level membership business. I think really I love the idea of a membership business in educating people around arts and crafts or a hobby like guitar or music or something like that. There's some really good like guitar membership businesses. I like those types of businesses for myself personally because they are larger. Typically, they're going to be larger businesses. They've already got a good monthly recurring revenue, and they probably already know their CPA, which is cost per acquisition. I could come in and put a really smart marketer in place and scale it. So personally, for myself, I like those types of businesses. Depends on, and so that's an answer for me, right? I've got a lot of experience. People that are starting out, it might be a bit different. Start with something a bit smaller, cut your teeth on something a bit different before you move to that. Otherwise, you could buy something and too big and not know what to do.
Yeah. So for somebody who is maybe considering buying a business, an online business, or a set of digital assets that can be turned into a business, what would be the 2 or 3 or 4 pieces of advice that you would give to them to make sure that they actually pick something that's going to be much more likely to work for them?
I love it. I love how you framed and ended that question. First thing is to make sure it's going to work for them is to know what your goals are. And I'm talking not just financial goals, but lifestyle goals. Once you know these 2 important goals, then you can put them into a set of guidelines, which we can call your investment criteria, and then follow those investment criteria. So this is probably the first 2 pieces of advice. Third piece of advice would be learn how to do due diligence. And then the last piece of advice would be hire somebody to look over your due diligence, or a mentor that has experience in the space to help you with understanding if it's risky, what its growth, what's risk mitigation strategy should be, growth strategy, and then next steps, help you with understanding the market, the actual value of the business before you even go away and put in an offer. Because there's a lot of people that come to me and say, Jaryd, I put in an offer for this, and it can be too late.
I'm smiling a little bit because, as I mentioned earlier, that was last year's project, was to buy an online business, one that was going and already bringing in some money and stuff. And I learned so much. I thought I'd done my due diligence and I was really happy with what I got. I'm still really happy with it. And I've got a really good relationship with the person that I bought it from. But there was so many things that I didn't know or didn't realize that I have a CIO background, Chief Information Officer background. I know a lot about the tech side. Wow, I learned so much I had no idea about. So yeah, having somebody to guide you through that process is actually really valuable. It can be really helpful. I have a couple of questions just quickly before we bring this interview to a close, and for my own benefit, really, to be honest. And that is because I just love this. I love this space of being able to either start something from scratch and build it into a business. So I do have a portfolio of websites that I started and I'm working on, but I also like the idea of buying something that already exists. So for you personally, or maybe since you've been doing this for a while, maybe think back to where you were a few years ago. What kinds of conferences do you attend? Conferences? Do you go to events that help with this whole learning phase? Would you have anything that you would recommend?
Yeah, not go to conferences.
Don't go to conferences.
Yeah, yeah. The free ones anyway. I went to a lot of free conferences and just realized that there were a lot of people selling a product that was, when I started out, I was so much more vulnerable and I was so hungry for success that anybody that looked like a little bit higher up than me is like, you tell me to do it, it's done, right? You need my money to help me with this, here, have it. And so I would go to a bunch of seminars, free seminars, and then get upsold these things that weren't necessarily what I needed. And so I would be very cautious of those. They were a bit more abundant. I think they're starting to come back in, selling from stage and all that sort of stuff. I think the goal is, I think it's smart to, it's the number one thing is if you want to achieve any level of success in life, you need to hire a coach or a mentor, right? Like we all know this. Everybody that's a successful athlete, successful author, musician, actor, they've got a team of people, coaches, mentors, and guidance and support to help them get there. So I think people are on the right track with going out and getting education, but having the understanding that, yeah, hire the right mentor to do that and not just try and educate yourself to do it all yourself either. Because I used to think, yeah, I'm going to be the self-made millionaire. How egotistical of me when if I just went and learnt one thing from somebody else, there's no such thing as self-made anymore, right? There is no such thing as a self-made person, right? Society has contributed. So why not just get those people on your team, not just try and only extract information from them, get them on your team. And if that's the goal, my advice would be don't go and try and find them that people, and no offense to, I got friends with great businesses and they really serve people and they sell from stage. But I would say go away and find people that are not just doing that, but find the number one person in that domain and hire them. If they're the best person at teaching people to buy businesses, or anybody else, just pay them the money. Like you need to do that. If they're the best at Facebook ads for this particular industry of selling drink bottles, and they've done this for a lot of other drink bottle companies, you hire them versus like just trying to go and find something general. And that would be my advice is get really specific with who you hire and vet them. Yeah. Does that answer the
Yeah,
question?
that's good. That's good advice. In terms of conferences, I wasn't thinking so much about free conferences. Yeah, there's always the risk that you end up buying stuff that you don't need at all. And you don't have any way of telling whether you need it or not because there's this whole learning curve you have to go through. But I was just wondering if there were events out there where you might be able to spend time with people who are mentors and educators and teachers who are there to share the wisdom and not necessarily to sell you something.
Yeah, there are programs and coaching companies that you can surround yourself with. I'm pretty anti all of that sort of world. I've worked like everybody is a coach. I know that I'm a coach, but I don't want to be that. I don't want to be in that scene. I just need to do it because people need it. Like I don't want to be like touted as this transformational coach and all this sort of stuff. Like I just give people what they need and that's it. It's not for me to boost my ego anyway. I don't want to do any more coaching calls really. But I think I would just say again, if you want to surround yourself with the right people, is be specific with the people. If your goal is to buy a business, put yourself in the community of people that have the one goal of each of those people is to buy a business, not somebody that they've just digital marketing, for example. Like you might learn some things, but it might not actually push you through because they might be on a different journey. They might be growing their business in a different way. And you're like, well, I'm just trying to buy one. So not the right crowd. So being really specific with the crowd, being on the same journey as you or have been through that journey. If it's a crowd of digital marketers that have just bought businesses and they're looking at growing their business, they're going to be able to help you for sure. That's still specific, but that's what I would say is being really specific and intentional with the people that you hang around with, friends and all that stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice. So if people were interested in finding more about how you could help them, if they're interested in this space, they're looking at potentially buying a business for the first time and they're interested in finding out more about how you could help them, where would they go?
Buyingonlinebusinesses.com. is my business. Yeah. Or they can type my name in like YouTube or Google, listen to my podcast. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. And we'll put that in the show notes. It's been really interesting talking with you. And I just once again thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I love your questions. You're very intentional and they were great. Thanks.
Thank you. And that's it for today's episode. I want to thank Jaryd again for sharing his insights and experience with buying and growing online businesses. I know I learned a ton, and I hope you did too. So if you enjoyed this episode and want to help make the podcast even better, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave an honest review over on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen. Those reviews help others find the show and decide if it's going to be useful for them on their own entrepreneurial journey. And be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. We've got more great guests and topics lined up that will inspire you and help you level up your online business game. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll catch you next time on the Online Business Launchpad podcast. See you then. If you're a longtime listener to the Online Business Launchpad podcast, you'll know that I often talk about Patslin's SPI Pro community. Now, what you might not know is that I'm a founding member of that community. And every year I keep signing up because I get so much value out of it. For example, every month I meet with a mastermind group whose members are at the same spot on the entrepreneurial journey as I am. And we celebrate our wins and navigate challenges together. And if we want to chat in between meetings, we just easily jump into the space that's reserved just for our mastermind and just say whatever's on our mind. It's a really supportive space where we all keep growing in confidence and capabilities, knowing that someone or several someones have got our back. And that's not all the value I get from being part of the SPI Pro community. I have access to really relevant trainings that Pat has put together. Plus, I've connected with several amazing guests for my podcast, experts who shared invaluable insights with my audience, and the opportunities just keep coming. I've had the honor of being on Patslin's own podcast and even teaching other SPI Pro members about some of the things that I'm expert in. And being a part of the SPI Pro community is like having my own special group of advisors that I can reach out to anytime I need them. Imagine having that network at your fingertips, where every connection inspires and every interaction teaches something new. That's what SPI Pro is all about for me. It's more than a community. It's a place where we as entrepreneurs come together to push the boundaries of what we can achieve. So are you ready to be part of something bigger? To learn, share, and grow alongside fellow business owners who are just as driven as you? Check it out for yourself and see for yourself the difference a truly collaborative community can make. And if you'd like to use my affiliate link to sign up, go to onlinebusinessliftoff.com/SPI-Pro. If you do, I'll receive a small commission at no extra cost to you, for which I thank you. And once you're in the community, say hello, and I'll be delighted to show you around. So join me in the SPI Pro community, and let's reach new heights together. Once again, that's onlinebusinessliftoff.com/SPI-Pro. And we'll see you there.